everyone. I hope you guys are having an incredible week. Today, we're going to be talking about part 2 of this series of ET contact. So today's topic is about what is ET contact. I want to begin the series with this topic before we dive deeper into the deeper concepts of interdimensional and ET contact, to clarify what ET contact is, and also shifting our idea from a state of helplessness, hopefully, into a state of empowerment. I feel that the more we understand the nature of our reality, the better and the easier it will be for us to activate within us our abilities to feel more empowered. I think that clarity is essential, as well as through the evolution, very quick evolution through understanding of what we are in our existence. So let's begin. ET refers to extraterrestrial contact. There is nothing external. In order for things to be able to navigate from one universe to another, from one solar system to another, the way of navigating that is through quantum non-locality. So this is not, we're talking about toroidal fields oscillating at different vibrational frequency ranges, which allow for expansion of different dimensional planes. The vibrational frequency of every planet allows for certain access to certain ranges of dimensional frequency accessible to that planet and to its organisms participating in that planet. The same thing as for us on Earth. Earth has its own vibrational frequency, its own structure, architectural structure, its own geometry, in which allows for this vibrational frequency to create a field that is in resonance with other celestial bodies in this multiverse. This world that vibrates and oscillates at this vibrational frequency essentially has its own DNA, which we know as a morphogenetic field. But within the structure of this reality, there is nothing actually outside of this Earth that has the ability of navigating inside out through the mechanics and through with the understanding of the physics that we have. The Van Halen belt in itself creates a magnetic field around the Earth, and it's actually through magnetism that this Earth is moving and existing. And so through quantum non-locality is how we are moving in and out of different dimensions, not only interdimensionally, because this Earth in itself has its own dimensional expression, and within that dimensional expression, many dimensions available to it that we are all oscillating in and out of, depending on our vibrational frequency. When it's discussed that we're evolving from 4th to 5th dimension, we are moving in and out of multiple dimensions constantly. And so depending on our vibrational frequency, we have access to seeing different levels of these dimensions. How we are seeing different levels of our dimensions is because we are co-creating within our energetic field. Our toroidal field, just like the Earth has its own toroidal field, is creating an experience for us. The experience is made up of many layers of dimensions, and we are moving in and out of those dimensions, allowing us to create infinite timelines within those dimensional layers that consist of information that is informing the experience. And what informs what we're going to be projecting holographically into these layers of our experience is everything that is encoded in our DNA. The protein writing DNA creates the physical vessel. The non-protein writing DNA is addressing the rest of the morphogenetic field that makes up this toroidal expression. And therefore, the different layers of dimensions that make up the different layers of your DNA. And as you begin to activate DNA, you have the ability of activating higher faculties. What are higher faculties? They are the higher bodies, higher dimensional layers of our reality that, when activated, intermesh into the visibility. So the veil is thinning represents and refers to the dimensions that are becoming active within our periphery, within our ability to see, to experience, the experience that we are co-creating. So that being said, what is ET contact? Are we talking about an entity, a being that is separate from us, external to us, physical from us? There are physical manifestations of interdimensional beings, but essentially they are all interdimensional. We are also interdimensional. So there is no extraterrestrial. We have defined through history certain origins of these beings that are actually manifestations of vibrational frequencies. The origins from which these species come from, again, species to me is vibrational ranges, expressions of vibrational ranges. Vibrational ranges, because we can access different beings depending on our vibrational frequency. We know this to be true in many different ways, but if we look closely at the different contactee experiences, if we look closely at their experiences and encounters with ET beings, the different kinds of beings that they're encountering, we begin to understand that our vibrational frequency and the subconscious state at the time of that encounter is essential to understanding the kind of quality of contact that they're having. Therefore, contact is not something external. When we see lights in the sky, like UFOs, UAPs, and all these things, the earth in itself, interdimensionally, we are accessing a higher dimensional level in order to be able to see this. We know this to be true because several groups of people that are in CE5s or in night watch tours oftentimes are together in groups, together in experiences, and yet they will not have the same experience. They will have a different experience, even though they are in the same environment and looking at the same light in the sky. ET contact is very personal in that it really is something that is expressed from the internal to the external. We have shared experiences with people that we are in resonance with. And a lot of times, again, these encounters there is an intelligence behind them. They are orchestrated, they are designed in order to create this union of contact between experiencers. So all the people in one city that can see these things are vibrating at a specific vibrational frequency that is an emanation of our genetic code. It's being expressed from their genetic code. Why? Because we create our reality, and within our experience is created co-creative experiences. So the idea that we're talking about something external to us really needs to shift, because if we begin to understand clearly what we're dealing with here, we can begin to quickly address fears, anxieties, insecurities, doubts, and help educate the human race on how and what it means to interact in these levels, how much power and control the human actually has in these experiences. And really, that contact is an expression of our genetic code. ET contact, no, I wish we can eliminate that word, extraterrestrial contact. It is interdimensional contact. We are meeting ourselves essentially on the higher levels. We'll talk about that, because essentially we are one. All levels of consciousness are an expression of us. So when we are interacting in these higher states, higher dimensional levels of vision activated, we are interacting with parts of us. Now, this really is kind of a complex topic, because if we look at the origin of the human race, we are descendants, genetically modified descendants from these organisms. The physical vessel, the genetic and ancestral timeline is a descendant of these races. The soul, the life force, is free from the marriage to that genetic ancestral evolutionary timeline, because the soul is all potential timelines existing simultaneously. And that soul essence has the ability of navigating interdimensionally, simultaneously, depending on itself, becoming aware of itself. So that being said, this whole concept of interdimensional contact essentially is a very powerful way for the human to begin to navigate their internal realms, internal dimensions that are available to them, to understand how to read the ancestral cyclical timelines, the evolutionary process from the origin, and the opportunity to depart from some of the more parasitic agendas that we're participating as a part of this matrix. When we incarnate in the physical matrix, we are here to experience this dualistic experience until we wake up in order to change frequency to be able to experience something other than that. So let's talk about abduction. So are we being abducted then? That being said, are we being abducted? If there is no external physical other, physical in the way that we think tangible, like this object, okay? If we change the frequency of this notebook, it's going to change the consistency of the pages and the expression of the molecules that make up this notebook. Okay, so it's in the same way. Contact is physical, as in my contact in 2013, when I was physically taken out of my bedroom into a craft in the physical and experienced that to the point where when I came back, the entire system, my entire organism was completely changed. I was able to see multidimensionally, and psychic faculties had activated in a very powerful way. And there are many, many thousands of contactees that also experience this activation as a result of contact. So that helps us understand that there is an actual shift in the organism that is experiencing. Why? The only way to explain this shift in the physical is that it's an interdimensional shift. It is the oscillation of these cells beginning to oscillate at a different frequency in order to match not only the matter that we are moving through walls, moving through windows, moving through time and space, losing time in a way that we cannot explain, is because we are slipping out from this timeline into another timeline. And these parallel timelines that exist are something that we can access by shifting vibrational frequency. People can induce contact by shifting their vibrational frequency, such as in CE5 experiences. So abduction, if we understand those mechanics of contact and how to create contact, then is something that happens from the inside out. Experiences of abduction are the ancestral agreements made, going deep into the genetic code within these entities for centuries of exchange for the reason of sustaining the matrix. And the genetic data that is taken from every new host creates the genetic alterations in these bloodlines and splicing of the soul in order to create fragmentation of the soul. Every time a person procreates, creates life, there is a fractalization that is occurring. The souls that unite to create the third is actually a piece of that soul life force that is now entered into the essence of this new being. And in the hybridization program, this is what we are talking about. We're talking about a third being created by the engineering of specific bloodlines, which mean levels of consciousness and condensed information that is packed into these genetic bloodlines. So the hybridization program is a highly, highly organized system due to the fact that the majority of the people that are currently in this timeline haven't reached the interwork, that haven't done the work to become conscious, to create that internal transmutation in order to advance their awareness in dimensions in which they are interacting with these beings. We, most of the time, are completely unaware of the kind of contact that we're having. Most of us are still in hypnosis, unaware of the interactions that we've had many lifetimes. And even in this lifetime, we lack such profound awareness that we are unable to understand what we did yesterday or the day before that, or what it means to have done what we did. Because every single choice that we make creates a timeline, a potential timeline. And so the power of the human for creation is so incredibly valuable that when we don't understand the mechanics of creation, we become hosts to parasitic deviations of this creation into counter-creative fragmentations of the human timelines and of the soul, because this is how to entangle this organism within the matrix deeper and deeper and deeper, layers and layers and layers of unconscious agreements to experience further suffering, further fragmentation, and the lack of awareness in understanding how our choices affect our everyday experience, physically in our everyday lives and relationships, and interdimensionally, is a lack of understanding. And therefore, this knowledge has been known for a very, very long time through many timelines of the basic mechanics of what co-creation is, looking beyond the physicality of what we're existing in right now into the laws of exchange of life force. Because essentially, we are not this physical body, we are life force. And therefore, the attention to the evolution of this vessel is to understand the core fundamental laws of how to master life force. Life force has a certain way of moving, certain way of exchanging, certain laws that pertain to the nature of these multiverses from which life force is able to move. And within our timeline on Earth, we are abiding by certain laws, particularly the laws of three of co-creation, creation, bringing into life, bringing the third, and experience through this. If we move into other dimensional levels, higher dimensional planes, the laws will be different. They may not be this dualistic. It might be a completely different construct. And therefore, the life force will move differently. This is how we have such a very broad variety of different manifestations of life forms when we begin to access visually into these dimensional layers. And even so, the matrix has within itself embedded programs and self-organizing archetypal organization of consciousness in which ranges of frequency manifest into certain forms that are programmed for the matrix, meaning that all the species that have evolved from, let's say, the concept of Enoch, the Enochian theory of Sophia, breathing life into Yaldabaoth, into the archons, and then all of the species that evolved from there. We are the descendants of this line of species. This is the ancestral genetic data lineage that we see in world history when we look closely at the historic timeline of evolution, not from the primates, not just since the primates, but even before that, many generations on this planet Earth that have existed and coexisted within timelines. So this planet Earth has a genetic history. It is a DNA that is embedded within the code, within this morphogenetic field of the Earth, and which the human has access to when it goes into its 9th and 10th dimensional layer, because that's where it begins to merge with the consciousness of the Earth, right? The physical aspect of ourselves is constructed by the morphogenetic field of the Earth, which embeds within it all of the genetic data of its ancestral lineage. This ancestral lineage allows us to participate in this reincarnation cycle, this human reincarnation cycle. What is the human reincarnation cycle? The human reincarnation cycle refers to the particular matrix, holographic matrix that is designed in order to perpetually embed life force into the earth. And the fractals of infinite consciousness that descend into this three-dimensional plane in order to experience the matrix become fragmented within lifetimes. Every single lifetime, every time the human experiences trauma in any way, it creates fragmentation. That fragmentation is also like a splicing of DNA. It's the splicing of the soul in order for it to become embedded within the many timeline branches that are created from the origin of the human. And those timeline branches embed this organism deeper within the matrix. That's why we have understood for many, many centuries through many different ancient literatures and books and even religion, which talk about how coming into that 0 point is the key to liberation. Because when the human soul comes into the three-dimensional physical realm to experience duality, how do you escape duality? Is to become the third, the integrated self, the integration of the dualistic expressions. And this is how you become 0 point. You are all and you are nothing, and therefore can begin to navigate anything else. So concept of abduction, it has been changed by CIA programs that have implemented into our society through the entertainment industry, particularly concepts about extraterrestrials, ETs, aliens. And of course, as you know, within mainstream media and television, films, all the entire entertainment industry, which is designed for social engineering. The entertainment industry is designed for social engineering. So what that means is that it embeds into the subconscious mind ways of seeing things, ways of perceiving, ways of feeling about things that pull away and distract and confuse the human from understanding what it is and where it is and what it's supposed to be experiencing at that time. It isn't until the human goes within to deprogram that social engineering that it begins to find its true core self as the observer of the experience, not as identified with its experience and its definitions, which results in compartmentalized ways of seeing things, separation, duality, here to experience separation. Separation is the separate from the whole. When something becomes separate from the whole in order to experience itself individually or as an individual, this individualistic concept that is also placed into our society as something good is actually an illusion. And so the sooner we understand that we are actually one and we are just here temporarily to experience this dualistic experience, we can very easily move through the distractions. In the years that I have been in the field and working with experiencers, I have found so much confusion and fear. But this is specifically designed disinformation, just the way we have social engineering through entertainment industry. Spirituality and New Age has also become a tool for social engineering. Those that are waking up, that process of waking up has become weaponized against the human in order to manipulate and embed more programs of more fear. So anything that takes you in the direction of fear and separation is going to be going into the inversion of everything that is light, that is unity, that is one, that is consciousness, that is source. So this has to be the new programming. And we have to do everything possible to understand that as a fundamental law, as a form of basis of how we see ourselves and everything around us. Because if we are not looking at things as unity consciousness, we are lying to ourselves about the natural law of our existence, the nature of our existence. And that always leads to death. It always leads to my next topic, which is the transhumanistic agenda. It is the merging of the technology, the inorganic with the organic. And what this refers to, we're not really talking about artificial intelligence. We're talking about something even more profound. The result of social engineering, the result of embedding programs, parasitic programs of separation and counter creation, are what eventually bring the human into such concepts of confusion and separation that they begin to fragment in a way that it becomes impossible to reintegrate. Therefore, lifetimes of reintegration have to occur because the fragmentation is so profound that this human is going to require lifetimes to reintegrate. I'm here to tell you it doesn't take lifetimes to reintegrate. It does not. That's another lie. It does not take lifetimes to reintegrate. Was able to reintegrate fragmentation within 4 months. Years of meditation and practice, but 4 months of dedicated attention. So are you. And the work never ends because every moment is an opportunity to fall back into this hypnosis. So this concept of being victimized by this or this experience within this organic construct that we live in is something that we have to try to eliminate from the mind, because that is how we become easily manipulated. When the human stops spinning their vortex, when the human starts counter spinning, it begins to deplete life force. In this universe of contrasting dualities, when an organism becomes unconscious, it becomes parasitic. So we become parasitic when we become unconscious. Not only do we become parasitic, but because we're parasitic, our exchanges with all things internally are imbalanced exchanges. We ourselves reject ourselves. We abandon ourselves. We become deeper and deeper, more unconscious, in which we begin to interact not only in the physical living life, we begin to have traumas, problems, relationship issues, emotional problems, blockages in our life, can't manifest, can move, all of these things that are perfect and wonderful and juicy for a matrix that capitalizes on the helplessness of the human that has forgotten they are source and becomes a host for parasitism of every dimensional level. Your everyday life, through your relationships, and interdimensionally in dream time and astral projection, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th dimensional level, 13, 12, if you even get there. Okay, so the levels of dimensions that we have accessible to us depend on the years and lifetimes that you've worked on your integration. Many of you that are incarnating at this time, and because we are here collectively experiencing a very, this very specific vibrational existence, the veil is thinning for everyone because this is where we're at. This is where we're at collectively. And there have been many generations where those generations have reached the heightened point of their existence and then collapse. Everything is cyclical in this dualistic expression. Okay, so let's take it now. Now that I explained this part, let's take it now. But what about the everyday abductees and experiencers that have trauma as a result of their contact? People that have awakened to the awareness that they are participant in ET contact. This is the awakening, right? So you see, there's an introduction into something, and then there's a learning process. And then once you understand the truth and everything about that, through trial and error and through the experiences, you get to have the whole picture of the truth. This ET contact is like this. We are introducing into a new dimensional existence. So we have to educate ourselves on what that means. The laws of navigation, again, the laws of exchange of life force. Those of you that have woken up to what you're seeing, because it's so foreign, because it's so unknown, it may feel terrifying during the experience that you were experiencing unconsciously in those dimensional planes. Sometimes you will not feel the fear until you process what you've experienced, because most of the time, really, in those experiences, you're still unconscious. However, the memory, the emotional memory of that experience is embedded within your body until you access that memory. We have millions of memories, of experiences of ourselves, of other dimensional planes, which we are interacting in dream time that we have not accessed. When we wake up, we begin to access these through dream time, astral projection, and interdimensional experiences. So the nature of our reality, again, remember, we are in this experience, the field, our field is our experience. We think that we're looking at things separate and far away from us, 3D, 4D dimensional. But in reality, we are projecting that experience and with others, co-creating a projection. Our projections merge in order to collaborate what we're experiencing, and together we co-create this experience based on the architecture of a construct that's created for us through the matrix hologram. This level of contact is interdimensional. Anytime that we are seeing beings is interdimensional. Your vibrational frequency of your entire body, or in dream time, is matching this frequency. Most people don't have conscious physical experiences because they haven't taken the time to elevate their frequency into that level. They will have access to the astral plane, memories and memories into dream states, vision of remote viewing into other dimensional planes. So, but not experiencing in vivo in this physical body, okay? Those cases are kind of not so common, but they will become more common with time because of where we're at in this evolutionary state timeline. Military utilizes chemicals, utilizes technology and implantation in order to construct imagery from the subconscious mind to create a construct of a reality around your experience, as in military abductions, which take children into these very dark programs of grooming them as a result of the wealth of their genetic data in order to create clones, in order to create hybrids, and in order to utilize them and alters created as a result of fragmentation in order to carry out certain programs. The secret space program is the interdimensional organization of interdimensional programs. These are the parasitic matrix hologram. The purpose is to capitalize on the unconsciousness of the human in order to utilize the genetic data for cloning, hybridization. So these are absolutely not designed for the betterment of humanity in any way, rather to create more and more fragmentation. Anytime any entity or organism behaves in a way that is parasitic, what is parasitic? Parasitic is that they reject themselves as source, therefore require from an external source to fulfill a need, whatever that need is, needing to feel loved, needing to feel seen, accepted, needing power. They believe they're not a generator of their own life force. They believe they are not source. They believe they don't have the ability to experience things in a certain way. They require from the external in order to utilize that. We become parasitic when we also play out our experience that way. But now we're talking about an organization, organized parasitism. This organized parasitism that makes up this shadow the highest ranks of government that go beyond what we know as the military, connected with politics, entertainment industry, all of the different systems that make up our reality are interconnected in these systems. This is the parasitic aspect of our reality. And from that place stems many different streams of programs, agendas that are primarily focused on transhumanist, eugenics, and the manipulation and control of the suppression of consciousness of the organisms that dwell within this physical matrix for the purpose of parasitizing life force. So on the other side of that, we have the consciousness, source, those that are connected to source. This would be the organic consciousness. Why organic? Because they abide by the laws of nature. The inorganic parasitic aspect is the inversion of nature, the departure from nature into the physical, material, mechanical, artificial. Who will be now in charge of the future generations? The inorganic is moving pretty quickly, and we become very quickly fascinated with technology, thinking that technology is the key to our liberation, that technology is the key to providing all the solutions for the problems that we have in the world, when in fact that is, again, a social engineered thought that is pulling humans into the submission and into a state in which we will have to override our conscious organic connection in order to become dependent on technology. This is the process of transhumanism. And there are many ways that this is gently inserted into the human timeline. There are many head players in our world that are focusing specifically on inserting this into the timeline. Transhumanist program is essentially the same inorganic parasitism that occurs and exists within all inorganic entities within this realm. Everything I'm talking to you about right now is a projection of what is inside of this holographic projection, which we are co-creating. Why? Because again, the more parasitic aspects of ourselves that exist within the body, the more we exist and participate in the parasitism of this matrix. So again, another reason why we are not helpless, why we are not victims of anything. And essentially, abductions are intrusions that we allow as a result of our unconsciousness. So we really have to take a very sobering look at where our mind, our thoughts, our intention is directed every single moment of your existence. This is the nature of the reality. And to begin to cultivate in ourselves and in our children that very, very powerful awareness. Because that awareness is what will help move us away from choosing or unconsciously participating, funding our lifestyles, the careers that we choose, the companies that we work for, the food that we're eating, where our money is going, the clothes that we wear, the things that we do in our life. All of these things are curtained by this very shiny little illusion of life, from which behind is actually the mechanisms of this experience of contrast that we're here to evolve through. And because of the law of free will, the law of free will states that something cannot be done to an organism without their permission. This is something that has to be understood and embodied and respected, not only by the parasitic aspect of ourselves, but by ourselves in our everyday life. Everything from psychic readings, interdimensional contact, connecting with our friends, exchanging with our friends energetically, sexually, families, all of these interactions, all of this exchange of life force that we participate in, we have to mature up to the level in which we are very conscious of the subconscious intentions behind everything we do, everything we exchange. And of all of these different exchange currencies that we have available to us through the emotional processes of the body, the sexual life force is the most powerful currency that we have, because sexual energy is the powerful explosion that creates life, that creates and manifests within this organic, multidimensional construct the seed of a life force, the third, which we are so powerfully able to manifest and create. The manifestation psychically, we manifest experiences, timelines, and events, and physically life. We bring life, and we bring life through intercourse and connection. And in the hybridization program, intercourse is orchestrated for those that are not conscious. It is orchestrated to the point that we are generationally, genetically modified since the origin of time through very specifically modified bloodlines, in which we are a product and descendants of genetically modified bloodlines. So everything that we have within our DNA, our ancestral lineage, has been carefully cultivated to create who you are today, your level of awareness and your level of unconsciousness. So our ability to begin to wake up from that unconsciousness is the internal shadow work, the deprogramming of matrix programming, in order to begin to find the 0 point once again. When the human finds the 0 point, it cannot be parasitized anymore. And finding the 0 point in the physical is one thing, but we need to be able to find the 0 point. We will experience finding the 0 point in all dimensional layers in which we become awake. Dream time, 8th, 9th dimension, 10th dimension, the Akashic realm, historical timeline, past lives. Okay, 10th dimension, we're looking at all past lives, integrating fragments from those past lives, becoming awake. All our fragments exist simultaneously, are exchanging with us simultaneously. Every potential timeline we create also interacts with the potential timelines that are existing in our fragments. And it's interesting because in many people through regression therapy, when they begin to go into some of these past lives, they begin to recognize, oh, my partner was actually my uncle in a past life, or it was my mother in a past life, or it was my father. So again, as you can see, we are cycling through fragments of our own self. Okay, so when we do ancestral work in DNA reprogramming, for example, we literally are we're reading the holographic DNA in order to understand how far back these programs of matrix programming are embedded into the genetic code through epigenetic. Those programs become embedded in the code through epigenetics. Trauma is passed down generationally, because it's embedded in the code. Trauma means fragmentation. Therefore, fragmentation, the mechanic of that fragmentation is encoded in your genetic code. It's encoded in your mechanisms, your reactions, your energetic system, your nervous system, your facial expressions, the way that your body looks, the way that you walk, the way that you talk. All of them are a product of this kind of genetic modification through the epigenetic impressions of experiences constructed to create trauma and fragmentation. So healing, you will notice when you do healing, when you get to the core root of these fragmented experiences, you will begin to notice they are nothing more than patterns of the same thing over and over again. Once you get to that point, you begin to break cyclical programs that have gone down for generation, including abduction and parasitic exchange of consciousness and life force in other dimensional layers. So remember that the hybridization program goes down family lineages as well. So a lot of times our mother will have contact, our aunt's going to have contact, sister's going to have contact, brother, our children are going to have contact. Why? Because it's embedded in the code. And it isn't until one of the souls, vessels that wakes up consciousness in the ancestral lineage to begin to clean up all the unconscious agreements that our ancestors, ourselves have made in order to end these parasitic imbalanced exchanges with ourselves and with these interdimensional aspects of ourselves. There is no external. We ourselves are interacting in these dimensional planes. We are exchanging unconsciously. High vibrational contact. On the other side of the spectrum, interactions with higher vibrational aspects of ourselves. Yes, because we live in a dualistic expression, now we have to talk about the higher vibration aspect. There are also higher vibration aspects of ourselves that exist that we are also interacting, more evolved selves in which we begin to interact in higher dimensional planes, are also an expression of the ability and the opportunity that you have prepared for yourself as a result of many lifetimes. Higher dimensional entities that we meet are our enlightened selves from other lifetimes. We meet them, we've created them, we're tuning into these simultaneous aspects of ourselves, just the way we tune into the simultaneous parasitic aspects of ourselves. We tune into the high vibration integrated aspects of ourselves. And we can channel information from that. However, remember that all of these fragmentations of yourself are still within this matrix hologram. So it takes some work and very serious discernment to understand who and what we are working with. And my suggestion in this process, because a lot of people are already here, they're channeling information, they're tuning into things, and whatever they channel, they make it law. They make it their complete reality. So we need to be discerning with this, and we need to be very careful on what we share. I have, for a very long time, processed everything that I have seen. In my early ET contact, when I first woke up to the ET contact, I started to receive connections from interdimensional beings that wanted to channel information through me. They wanted to give me technology, healing abilities, activate things within me, light language, okay? And what I quickly became aware of is that there is an exchange rate. Whatever we exchange with, and I'll just simplify it this way. Source, the all, beings of source, the higher self that is the all, it never will interfere with any other organism because it is everything. And as everything, it understands the laws of the universe, that it has so much love and compassion that it holds space for itself and the other to evolve compassionately and lovingly, because it knows that by holding space for the other, this other organism can evolve and flourish and reconnect itself with itself once again. This is how Source operates through the law of free will, how it respects the law of free will. It will never interfere in someone else. That's why we can't do healings, readings, psychic information, go into other people's dreams, interact with people, or manipulate people through hypnotherapy, through practices, through psychic connections, telepathy. We can't do any of those things. Military has weaponized intuition. People with heightened intuition, people with the ability to remote view, they have weaponized that. They utilize it for their benefit. That is a parasitic breaking of the law of the universe, of free will. And we ourselves do that with ourselves. And when we first wake up to our psychic abilities, because it's so powerful, we have to learn how to harness that life force. We have to learn how to respect. Because here's what happens. When the organism becomes parasitic and utilizes intuitive abilities to be parasitic on others, it dies, it becomes ill, it gets sick, because it's not respecting the laws of exchange. In pranic healing, when a healer isn't neutral at all times, when a healer doesn't wait for the person to ask them to be healed and they just go ahead and heal them, they take on all the illness within the body. And even though it might not be apparent in that moment, over time, the healer becomes sick, ill, problems, sickness, pains in the body, all of these things that happen because imbalance exchange. These are the laws of the universe. We can experiment with them all we want, and there have been many studies of this. There's entire papers of scientific experiments on pranic healing, the exchange of law force, what happens to healers. We have millions of healers around the world that can attest to the fact that when they become emotionally entangled with their client, they take on the illness. When the healer exchanges imbalance, they become exhausted after the healing. When people use dark inversions of magic manipulation of life force in any way, people get headaches, sick, drained, all these things. There are certain laws. So you can't negate this entire understanding of how life force is exchanged and still look at interdimensional contact and not understand that these laws apply to exchange. We are dealing with intelligences, okay, that have the ability to see from a broader perspective because they're from a higher dimensional plane. And yet we, because we're completely not only matrix programmed, but disconnected from ourselves and our intuitive abilities, we would never be able to understand the kind of agreement that we're making. Why? Because we have something called the ego. And the ego is trained in this matrix through indoctrination and social engineering to look outside for validation, help, love, attention, connection, all of that. So that programming that is parasitic, we are looking at these beings with those eyes. And so the exchange will never be even. We don't even understand when we receive information. So when I began to discern who was giving me, who was wanting to connect with me, who wants to be me, who wants to channel this information, that immediately became apparent to me. Source does not negotiate like this. And I do experience source information. There is no exchange. It exists and it's one with all. And the way that we know information is high vibration, is that it takes the understanding of the well-being of this vessel and the collective. That is source. That's an understanding of source. And another thing is that you have to be incredibly pay attention to every word that's being said, because there are channeled messages that begin to give information that sound, wow, so amazing, so enlightened, and then they just slip it in there, little ways of speaking that are inversions of truth. Control will never be the answer. The solution is that every individual starts to activate their intuition and discernment immediately and begin to understand what love, unconditional love and connection to source is, in order for when we start to encounter interdimensional beings, we are grounded in our 0 point. And you will see that your exchange will be very clear. You will know. So higher vibrational beings, future aspects of ourselves, can provide us with information that we need for our journey at that time, healing for ourselves, move us forward. They are tools that we can utilize, but it's not to be made or to become identified with it. In fact, any time that we identify ourselves with any one species, consciousness, level of consciousness, range of frequency, it becomes our death. Okay, I'm Arcturian, I'm Lyran, I'm Syrian, that's it. This is who I am. People change the facade, they behave these certain ways, and this is a limitation. And again, another construct, and again, another matrix that we have created for ourselves. Liberation and true free will only exists for those in 0 point. You cannot have free will anytime you're not in 0 point, because those are the laws of the universe. I will close the topic on interdimensional and extraterrestrial contact here so that we can focus on the next step. And I will expand on these topics further in these next couple videos. If you have any questions, put them down below so that we can address them. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and all my love.